Oh, here we go. Sorry.
The broadcast is now starting.
And welcome to our Vivit SIG talk today. We're going to be talking about quality and testing proven practices. Today's session is hosted by myself. I'm Mark Ford. I'm on the Vivit Board of Directors. I'm currently serving as your community director, and I'm also a Carolinas local user group leader. Today's speakers, again, we have myself, Mark Ford. I'm a lead developer at TIAA as well. I've been an ALM admin for about 7 years and a Tasktop admin for about 4 years at TIAA. And I have a pretty extensive knowledge of Tasktop Sync and Tasktop Hub with over 11 production integrations, thinking hundreds of artifacts a day, which is about 7 integrations on Sync and 4 on Hub. And today I will be talking about Tasktop Hub. I also have with me today Arvind Namasabayaman, and he is a manager and lead developer, also at TIAA, co-worker of mine. He is a tools admin and architect at TIAA, managing Micro Focus UFT, Mobile Center, Performance Center, and CA Dev Test. And he is very passionate about strategic software testing and automation. And as I said, he's a great coworker of mine, and he is definitely very passionate. He will be talking about Mobile Center today as well. All right, just a little housekeeping, the webinar control panel. So we want your questions today. So as we're speaking and going through and you think of questions, please type those in. So you should see a little webinar control panel that should be in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, since we're using the GoToWebinar platform. And you'll see that there's a little questions pane that you can expand, and you can type in your question where it says type in your questions, and you can click that send button. So those questions will queue up behind the scenes, and we will see what time. We'll both try and leave a little bit of time after both of us speak so that we can cover your questions. We'll cover as many as possible. That's one way. Another really great way to submit questions is if you have access to Twitter, and you can send in your question for either of our presentations, and make sure you use that hashtag VivitSigTalks. We have somebody monitoring Twitter, and they will see those questions, and they'll put those into our question pane for you. And it's also a great way to generate a little bit of social media buzz around the topic and the questions. So another option there. All right, my topic, SDLC tool integration using Tasktop Hub. So with my agenda today, I'm going to be covering a few slides. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on slides so that I have plenty of time for today's demo. But I do want to briefly explain what I mean by tool integration, cover that a little bit, and then set the stage for the demo by mentioning just a few items about Tasktop Hub, kind of prepare for what you're going to see during the demo. Then I'll go into a live demo of the product. We'll cross our fingers and hope everything works well there. As we know, live demos can always bring some unexpected things. And then questions I will take after Arvind's topic. I'll cover those, but definitely feel free to type those in as we go, as you think of them, and then we'll cover those afterwards. All right, so a bit of background. If you haven't heard of Tasktop before, it's a software company, and they sell a product called Tasktop Hub. It's one of the products that they sell. I've been a Tasktop customer for about 4 or 5 years, starting with their Tasktop Sync product. So you might have heard of Tasktop Sync. And as you can see, we still have several integrations running under that Tasktop Sync. Last year, I spoke as a customer at Tasktop's first conference. It was last October, and I got excited about their next-gen integration tool that's called Tasktop Hub. So ever since that conference, I've been using their Tasktop Hub product, which is their next-gen product. And I've been using that for about 6 months, and as you can see, we have several integrations already up and running on that, on Tasktop Hub. And so this year, we're going to work on moving the rest of our Tasktop Sync integrations over to Tasktop Hub so that we'll have everything all on the same platform. So tool integration, what is that? Well, tool integration simply means software tools talking to each other. It's kind of in a nutshell. And as software tools typically store a lot of information, right? That's their nature. And we see that organizations tend to have a lot of tools, tend to accumulate a lot of tools, and those typically come from different vendors. And it usually doesn't take too long before you realize that it can be real beneficial to have your software tools sharing that information with each other. Sometimes we have ways that we, as humans, do that through email, but boy, wouldn't it be a lot easier if the software tools could themselves share their information? Wouldn't it be great if they could talk to each other? A lot of software tools these days have what are called APIs, application programming interfaces. And APIs are great ways to send and receive information between tools. And API calls are formatted certain ways, and you've got different platforms and protocols like SOAP and REST and things like that. But these APIs are that basic mechanism for exchanging information. And developers can write their own mechanisms to utilize these APIs to share information. And there are even some software tools will develop their own mechanisms and have that as part of their product. One good example of that is the Micro Focus ALM Synchronizer. You may be familiar with ALM Synchronizer. It's a tool that can do a lot of what I'm going to show today. It can synchronize between ALM and Jira. It covers real basic synchronizations real well. It's a good free tool. We've been using Tasktop Hub for some time, and as you'll see, Tasktop Hub can do that as well as a whole lot more. So what is Tasktop Hub? Well, it's basically a tool integrator, and it provides 3 central functions. The primary one that I'm going to be speaking about today is this ability to synchronize data. So I'm going to show you how Tasktop Hub can synchronize data between Micro Focus ALM and Atlassian Jira, how you can create an artifact in ALM, and Hub can then automatically create that in Jira, and then it keeps those artifacts in sync so that if you make any updates on one artifact, it can then update that in the other. And then Hub can do a couple of other things, like you can push data from one tool to another and kind of as a generic endpoint. You can also capture and store transactions for transactional logging in case you have a tool that maybe doesn't have any logging or doesn't have sufficient logging. It can provide that as well. All right, basic mechanics. So Tasktop Hub provides, it's a simplification of using these APIs. So as I said, you're a developer, you could make your own API calls. What Tasktop Hub, though, does is it provides the platform for doing that in a very efficient and, I'll say, elegant way. So we can set up a defect between endpoints like ALM and Jira, and this platform then takes care of all of your querying needs. So it's going to go out and it's going to query ALM. It's going to query Jira. It's going to look for new artifacts that are applicable for sync, and it'll create them in the other tools. It's going to keep watching those artifacts to see did any field updates occur. And if so, then Tasktop Hub will go ahead and it'll make those field updates in the other tool. It'll watch for comments. It'll watch for attachments. So when comments or attachments get added, it'll automatically facilitate the addition of those items to the artifact in the other tool. And then it also provides mechanisms to retry. Maybe there's a locked record on one of your endpoints and it can't update it at that time. It will wait and then it'll retry it again several times until it is successful. Reporting errors. Sometimes errors occur when you make an API call. Maybe there's a connection issue, maybe there's a data issue. Hub can automatically facilitate that reporting of those errors, alert you to that fact, and maybe in a future topic, I'll talk about how you can even set up some automatic remediation of some of those errors, which is pretty cool. Storing metrics. Obviously, how much activity it's doing is a great thing to see, and Tasktop Hub currently integrates with 39 different SDLC tools from a variety of vendors, so that's pretty exciting. A lot of those that I'll show you probably will look very familiar to you, and you might actually have them, several of them in your organization. All right, so the demo today, I'm going to talk about 4 different pieces to set up an integration. These are kind of your minimum 4 steps to get a very basic integration up and running. So I'm going to talk about repository connections. We'll have 2 of those. Tasktop Hub needs to know a URL and a login credentials for each tool so that it can go out and can make those API calls. I'll show you the model, and that is, in Tasktop Hub, a model is your generic representation of the fields that are going to be involved with an integration. And we'll see how Tasktop Hub has predefined models that make it really quick and easy to get a basic integration set up and running quickly. So as I said, the model is the fields that you're going to use, and then the collections map each tool endpoint to those model fields. So it'll go through, and it'll actually go through on its own, and I'll show you how it'll look at your ALM, it'll look at your ALM fields, it'll look at the model fields and say, oh, hey, these match, and set those up. It'll look at JIRA, match those up, do a lot of things automatically, and to get this up and running pretty quick. And the collections also are where you indicate what ALM projects, what JIRA projects. Maybe you have just one project in each, maybe you've got multiple projects. And if you have multiple projects, then when you set up your integration between your ALM and your JIRA, using your collections, which are pointing through your model, and using your repository, then the integration is where you can set up the routing controls. You can say route from this project to this project under these conditions, or based on this field setting, filtering as well. Maybe you don't want all your ALM defects going over to JIRA. Maybe you just want certain ones, or only at a certain time, maybe at a certain status. You can set up the filtering, and that's how the integration then facilitates all of that moving of the data. All right, let's go to our demo. Here's the exciting part. All right, so this is Tasktop Hub. I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right, the Tasktop Hub dashboard comes up, and right away you can see all of the different products, that the different tools that it integrates with. I have the top 4 here that are colored in because those are the ones that we are using in our organization. But you can see all the different tools that they have available. And of course, with Hub, there's different licensing models. So maybe you have access to a couple, or maybe your license model would have access to more, or even all of them. And then you tell them which ones you need, and then you can have those added into your package there. So I've got those top 4. And then the 4 items that I mentioned were the repositories, models, collections, integrations. Those are the 4 buttons up here. So I did go ahead and set up my 2 repositories already. So I set up a connection to our installation of JIRA, and I set up a connection to our installation of Micro Focus ALM, gave it the URL, gave it the login credentials, password, all that information. Now, models. Here is where the predefined models come. So when you bring up Hub, it comes out of the box with several predefined models for different artifact types. And the one I'm going to be using here today is going to be the defect type. So this is how it comes pre-configured, and you can use this as is. You can add fields to this. You could go and create your own model if you need. But here's the predefined one, and it has fields that are very common to defects in organizations. And it has the field labels, and then any of these that typically contain drop-down values like your priority and your severity. They have generic values in there for those. So again, model is your generic representation. Here's what I want to sync between. And then the collections, we'll see that I'll map my particular endpoint and my particular projects to that model. And then where the model fields overlap between 2 endpoints, those are the fields that will integrate. All right, so I want to go through, and I'm going to move through this pretty quick because I want to show that I can set up basically from scratch a simple synchronization between ALM and Jira in about 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to go through, and I set up the repositories are there. I've got my out-of-the-box model, so we'll go ahead and use that. That'll work great for me. I'm going to go through and set up my 2 collections and my integration, and I'm going to move kind of quick so we can see if I could do that in 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to go to my collection, I'm going to start my clock, and I'm going to create my new collection. So here again is where I'm going to map my ALM endpoint to my defect model. I'm going to go into my connection, I'm going to choose my ALM repository, I'm going to choose my project, I'll pick an ALM project that I want to use, and then that will enable me to select my ALM artifact type, which will be my defect. I'll choose my model, which will be a defect, and I save. So it's now gone out to my ALM project. It's looked at all my ALM fields in my organization, and it's already mapped them all up with the defect, or yeah, the defect model field out of the box. And then it's alerting me to the fact that I've got a few here with drop-down values that I need to map. As we know, drop-down values can differ between different endpoint tools, right? You might have 1, 2, 3 in one tool. You might have high, medium, and low. So this is allowing me to map my ALM custom drop-down values to the model values. And then we'll see that those model values will then map, of course, between the 2 endpoints and allow everything to flow. So I'm going to go ahead and map my priority values, select all these. All right. And we'll go ahead and we should have one more set here. My status values. So again, I'll choose what my ALM status values and how those map up to my model status values. Open might be progress, rejected, reopen with that. Okay, we'll map all those. All right, so there I'm done, and I've mapped all my ALM fields to my generic model fields. I'm done with that collection. Now I can go and create my second endpoint collection, and this will be my Jira defect collection. So I'll pick my Jira endpoint. I'll go in and I'll pick my Jira project. That's where it'll pull my Jira fields from. I can select as my work item a bug. I can select, again, I'm selecting the same defect model that I chose with ALM, and that's going to do the same process. It's going to go out, look at Jira, and it's going to automatically match up my Jira fields with my model fields. You can see that I've got 2 here that I need to have some value linkage, so I'll do those. Just connect these values. And we'll do major high, medium, trivial low. All right, those 2. Okay, and then I should have one more, which will be my status values. All right, so I'll go ahead and connect these up, maybe analysis in review or in progress, maybe a pending acceptance is maybe a fixed. Close, sounds like done, that looks good. In dev, that's probably in progress. QA ready, these are probably kind of fixed. Type status, maybe a sprint ready. We'll just set that there. All right, and we're done with that. So I've got both of my endpoints are mapped to my model. And then any of these model fields that match, that line up between the 2 endpoints, that's where my fields are going to sync. So now we'll go to our integrations, and we'll set up a new integration. And you can see we can do several different integration types. I'm going to do the work item synchronization. And this is where I'll do my ALM Jira. And I'll pick my ALM repository. And I'll pick my collection. And I'll pick my Jira repository, my Jira collection. All right. And then we'll say my artifact creation flow. Maybe I want to do one-way creation. If it's new in ALM, I want it to create in JIRA, but not necessarily the other way. Or I could do it both ways, whichever. We'll do our routing, so I only have one project to route. We'll do our filtering. Maybe I want to filter on status when status is in progress. And we'll do our comment flow. And we'll flow comments both ways. And we'll do our attachment flow. And I'm coming right up at 5 minutes if you're keeping track. And we'll do our conflict strategy. And we'll put that in. I'm done. So I'm actually went over a little bit. I talked a little bit too much, so I did go about 10 seconds over. But that is the basic steps for setting up an integration in right at that 5 minutes time. So that's pretty good. Now all I have to do at this point is click the run button and my integration starts. And now we can see that my integration is running. And I can go to my activity and I can see from my activity, did I have these already? Yeah, these were old, so we'll remove those. All right, so in my activity now, it has not done any synchronization because I told it to synchronize when my ALM defect is in progress, which mapped back to my open status. So you can see that I have one ALM defect. It's in a new status. It has several fields filled in from ALM. I've got a description. I've got a couple of comments in here. I have a few values, a summary, and all that. And we'll go ahead and we'll set this now to open, which then maps to that in progress state on the model. And then Tasktop Hub, we can see it's already picked it up here. It's picked up that ALM defect and it's done its work. And so we can see it's done a few things here. It went ahead and created an artifact in JIRA, and here's the JIRA ID, and it did update some information back to ALM. We can expand, we can see it did a comment, So now we can go to our JIRA, and I'll do my refresh, and there is my defect from ALM. And we can look at that, and it's got the summary from ALM, and the description came from ALM. We can see even the comments, the 2 comments that I added in ALM are here. Reporter was by me. We can add a comment back from JIRA. Go ahead and add that. And we go to our activity, and we should see that show up here. And there we did our activity. So we'll go look at ALM. I'll do a refresh, and there's my comment right back from JIRA. All right, so that was kind of quick, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for what Tasktop Hub can do, and that's really a basic integration, and it was that quick and that easy. Those predefined models really help you figure out what, because it does the work for you, right? It goes out, looks at your ALM, looks at your JIRA, matches everything up, and says, here's based on what I see, here's what you're most likely going to want to sync. And of course, you can then expand from there. You can add new fields as needed. You can add values, get all that mapped up and everything, and work from there. But always gives you, it's a great way to have a good starting point. It's a little bit easier to work with something that's already there rather than necessarily creating everything from scratch. All right, so, and as I said, that was kind of a basic one. I'm thinking about doing more of these, maybe doing a series of different Tasktop Hub, kind of, each one going into a little more depth and a little more just beyond some of the basics. So if you're interested in any of that, but feel free to leave that comment, leave that feedback at the end, or let me know, yeah, I'd like to see more about Tasktop Hub. Here's some contact information. And definitely add those questions in, and then I'll be taking those at the end. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Arvind, and he's going to be talking about installing and using Mobile Center. So go ahead and switch the presentation over to Arvind. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Mark. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. And I've shared my screen. Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Looks great, Arvind.
All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to talk about, as Mark said, I'm going to talk about installing and using Mobile Center. And we're going to start with, what is Mobile Center, introduce Mobile Center, and then talk a little bit about the architecture, the installation best practices, and then, show a demo on using Mobile Center and how it integrates with, other microfocus tools, other automation tools. Maybe we'll focus on one tool, and then but other tools pretty much work a similar way. So we at TIA started using, looking into mobile testing and mobile automation almost 5 years back. We used to use a tool called Mobile Labs, and we switched over to Mobile Center almost a year back. We started looking at Mobile Center 2 years back, and then we did a POC on it, and then we switched to Mobile Center, mid last year, and then we have been using Mobile Center in our environment for almost 6 to 7 months. But the Mobile Center has been in the market for almost 3 years now. And when we started doing our POC, we were basically comparing, mainly interested in Mobile Center because of its integration with other microfocus tools. As we already had, ALM and UFT for functional testing, Performance Center for performance and load testing in-house, and so based on that, we wanted to look at Mobile Center. But initially, when we started looking at Mobile Center, we had some, performance issues that we wanted microfocus to fix. And after they did that, we switched to Mobile Center. All right. So Mobile Center, obviously, as the name indicates, it's a mobile testing platform, and it integrates seamlessly with the tools, other tools like UFT for functional testing, and for test automation tools, UFT and LeanFT, and for performance testing tools like Performance Center, and it also integrates well with Appium for test automation. So it supports real devices and emulators. That is one of real good benefits of using Mobile Center, right? So we can have an on-prem lab setup where we have a collection of Android and iOS devices, and it also works with the cloud, where we can have where we can connect to Amazon device farm, and you can get devices from the cloud and then execute your tests there too. And it also integrates via plugin to Jenkins. If you want to, if you have a defined DevOps environment and a pipeline, and then you can do an automated build and deploy. And if you have a well-defined automated test suite, you can actually kick it off from Jenkins using a plugin. So Mobile Center architecture. So it's a client-server architecture, and it has a server and a connector piece. The server is basically it provides the UI for you to manage your devices, mobile applications, and it also lets the administrators to manage, create devices groups and user groups, and manage the settings. It can be a Windows or Linux server, and for a connector, it's connects. I mean, as the name indicates, right? It connects to the mobile devices, and it can be. The server comes with its own connector. You can actually hook up your devices to the server directly. You can connect the devices to it and then access the devices remotely. But if you want to build an enterprise solution, you might want to have a different connector environment, right? Basically, it supports Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. For our environment, we have a Windows connector. It sits on a Windows 2012 virtual environment, and we have two Mac OS connectors. One we have for iOS devices. We have about 20 devices connected to the Mac machine, and we have about 18, 19 Android devices connected to another Mac Mini. So we bought this the cabinet to house our devices. So it's basically a 48 device cabinet, and it has 3 USB hubs in it. It's from Triplite, and it also houses the connector that's the Mac Mini that we have in house. It also houses that, and the 3 USB hubs are connected to the Mac Mini, and each USB hub is connected to 16 devices. It works for us if you're looking to build a mobile solution, and it's a good place to start. All right. So installation, right? We started with a dedicated server, and we wanted to keep our server separate from the connector. So I would advise you to do that. That way, you don't really put a lot of load on one machine. So essentially, have a dedicated server and a connector environment. And if you have the budget available, I would advise you to have separate environment for iOS and Android devices. That way, if you'd be able to in case of issues, right, you'll be able to troubleshoot the issues appropriately. And if you have a Mac OS connector, so the connector supports Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. If you have a Mac OS connector, advise you to limit the number of devices to 16. We have 20 devices in our environment, but if we go more than 16, we have seen issues come up, and I would recommend you to limit the number of devices to 16. And we are working with HP. The Mac OS supports the connector software supports 50 devices. There is an official support for it, but we have seen issues when we do connect more than 16. So we are working with Micro Focus to fix those issues, but at this time I would recommend to stick to 16. Use a genuine USB cable to connect to the devices, especially with Android. We have encountered issues when we use third-party USB cables. Again, the recommendation from Micro Focus is that you should be using the cable that came with the device. If not, use a genuine USB cable. With the iOS devices, you need to enable UI automation for it to work. And with Android devices, you need to enable developer options and USB debugging for the connector to be able to recognize your device and install the agents on it. That is for any mobile testing solution. You have to do that. A quick, if you're not sure how to do that, a quick, Google should be able to help you with that. And we advise you to, for Android, for the devices to stay awake. That way it doesn't, lock itself, or that would mean even for iOS devices to disable the auto lock so that you can connect to the devices. And keep the brightness to the minimum because you're not going to look at the device. Essentially, you're going to VNC into the device or do a remote into the device. So you don't want to eat up battery or when power reduce the power consumption and heat generation. Another thing is place the devices in vertical position, for the orientation change to work properly. This is again something that we encountered issues when changing orientation. So finally, having the devices in a vertical position helped with the changing the orientation. And when installing the connector and connecting the iOS devices, the agents need to be signed with a development certificate. This is for you to be able to install the agents on the device for the initial use. Again, this is a must with any testing solution out there. So it's not really something with Mobile Center. Any solution that you go to Mobile Labs or Perfecto Mobile, you need to be signing your agents that go on the devices. Another tip is to use app packaging and signing service. This is for the application under test. So for the that way, it's automatically installed on to the. I'll talk about it during my demo, but this is again, this is not required but recommended. And I would recommend to set up automatic app uploads to Mobile Center. That way, your applications are not. You don't have to drag and drop or upload your build every time your build is ready. So you can actually use the APIs from Mobile Center to automatically upload applications to it. All right. Okay, let's go to the fun part of the demo. All right. So how we have set up is we have integrated our in a Mobile Center to LDAP AD authentication. So if the users can use their email addresses or the AD IDs, network username and password to be able to log into Mobile Center. But for this demo, I'm going to use my local admin account so that I can showcase the admin features. So log in, and so as soon as you can log in, you can see the UI layout, right? So there are 3 tabs: the application, devices, administration tab. A normal user would only see 2 tabs: apps and devices tab. And the left side of the pane, you can see the filter. This is for both the apps and devices. where you can filter, based on your criteria, and you can see, what you're really looking for. And you can, since we are using a local account, I can change my password here. But if you're using your LDAP AD account, changing password doesn't work because it's essentially a network. But if you're using a local account, you can change password and log out here. Another thing is, if you are logged in as an administrator, you can collect the logs. For example, if you encounter a bug and if you want to send the logs to Micro Focus, or you want to send the logs to somebody else for review, right? You can collect. You don't have to log into different server, the connector server, or the actual Micro Focus. Mobile Center server to collect the logs. One place you can collect all the logs when you go, go to here to collect the logs. So for apps, so let's focus on one of our applications here. So these ads, as I have said, are automatically uploaded to Mobile Center. So that's how our build process is. Once the build is complete, we run a script in Jenkins that would automatically upload our application into Mobile Center. And the Mobile Center, once it receives the application, the IPA or APK, for an iOS device, iOS application, it would re-sign and repackage the application. So when I say re-sign, right, it would re-sign the application for our devices, so that when we install the application onto our test devices, we don't have to go in and trust our enterprise certificate. So to avoid that, we re-sign our applications using a developer certificate and our provisioning profile. And so you can see what build or version or upload time, those information you can see here. And there are if you want to delete an application entirely, all the builds inside the application. So right now we have quite a few builds, and if you want to delete everything together, you need to delete all the application uploads here. But if you want to delete an individual build, you need to go into more information and then select the particular build and then delete it. You can also manually upload your application by dragging and dropping your IPAs here, or if you click on upload application, it would open up the dialog box to find out your IPAs or APK files to upload here. So one other thing that the UI helps me is to understand the minimum requirement of an application. So for us, let's say, for our TIA application, I can see it supports, iOS 10.3 plus. It doesn't support anything less than 10.3. Similarly for Android, it supports, Android 4.4 plus. So those are, we can get all this information from the UI. And when we go to the devices, right? So, one thing that I would like for mobile Micro Focus to see do is, we really would like to see a tabular form so that we can clearly see a lot more information and a lot more devices rather than scrolling and trying to find the device. but I really like the filter here that helps me to filter out the devices that I really want to use. Since our application supports 10.3 plus, I can filter out the available devices and then connect to a device that I want to connect to. For our demo, I have reserved a couple of devices so that none of the other users in our environment take it up. So you can from the displayed information, you can see the two devices are used by me. If it is used by others or reserved by others, you can check it out here. Like it's used reserved by one of our users in the environment. And other information that helps us is like you can see the actual device. So how we have named our devices, we have given a proper name to identify the actual device model, and we also given the location of the device. If we find any issues, if we want to go to the physical device, and then if we want to troubleshoot with the device, we can actually easily find it by this location information. And you can actually remotely restart a device from the UI using restart device. It triggers a command on the connector server, and then it restarts, issues a iDevice command, and then it restarts this device. And we can also, if for some reason the devices go offline, right, we can try and reconnect the device, which would trigger the agent installation process on the device. And I mean, that's the use of a reconnect device button here. All right, let's connect to a device, and this is an iPad 10.5. This is an actual physical device. Like if you see, open up the camera, you can see it's an actual physical device sitting inside our cabinet. I mean, you can actually see another device, that's sitting close to it. So, from here on, you can actually, install the app that you want to install, our application. You can choose the application that you want to install, and then install it, and then use it. I'm not going to go through the process of actually installing and using, mainly because it takes 5 to 6 minutes for it to push it to the connector and then install it. And I would recommend selecting uninstall the application after current session, because that way it leaves the device at an initial state for the next user. I mean, I'm on a corporate network here on Perm, but if I want to work on a VPN, it is a bit, if I'm working on a bit slow connection, I usually reduce the image quality to like 75%, and then zoom it so that the image or the screen share loads a bit faster for me, and I'm able to interact with the device much faster. I mean, I can change the orientation. Right now, the orientation is locked for our testing, but if the orientation is unlocked, we can change the orientation using the change orientation, or take a screenshot and do all these things here. And one other thing that I really like is if I want to send a long URL, yeah, I can actually paste. I don't have to go type use the keyboard here to type it on the device. I can actually send a text to the device where I can, if it is a long URL, it helps to do your testing much faster. All right, and when you close a session, right, it's you should click on the close button to close your session. That way, the connector communicates to the server to release the session, and then your device is available for others to use. The easiest way is to click close tab to close it, but that is not the recommended way. You need to click on the close button to actually release your session. So when you connect, there is a lock on the device. If you see here, there is a lock on the device so that nobody can connect to it. So you need to release the lock. You need to click on the close button to release the lock for it to be released. So the administration, in the interest of time, let me do a quick thing here. You can actually group the devices, based on if you want to segregate the devices for testing. You can create a separate group and then allocate users to it, so that in the shared, it's not available in the shared pool. And you can actually connect to Amazon device farm from updating here the settings, and you can actually and we can also do the LDAP integration here settings too. LDAP integration. Actually, I did want to talk about the connectors too. We have two connectors here. You can see a quick overview of what versions you are running, and then how many devices are connected, and how many devices are being used. Those kind of information here too. Actually, I wanted to do a more in depth too, with respect to connecting the devices, connecting to the devices from Performance Center. But since we are out of time, we can easily connect to it. The integration is very smooth with respect to all the Micro Focus tools. This is a true client native mobile recording with Vusion. So you need to just fill in the details, and once you hit connect, you can actually connect to a physical device and do your recording for the scripts. So going back, so my contact information is here. If you have any questions regarding Mobile Center or or any mobile testing, I've been using the different tools for quite some time, for the past 4 or 5 years now. Feel free to hit me. I should be able to help you guys out. All right.
Okay. Yep. All right. Yep. Thanks, Arvind. That was great. Lots of good information. And I think if you could do a follow-up session delving into some of these other items, that would be wonderful. We do just have 1 minute left, so not really time for questions. I see that we did get several good questions entered into the question pane, so we will take those offline and we'll answer those. And those will be on the website along with the recording, so that you can still get that information. And if you want to move to the next slide. So just remind you of a couple of upcoming Vivit webinars. We've got a few here coming up. We've got the Micro Focus Hybrid Cloud. Then we do have on the 19th, we've got our other SIG Talk series on the IT operations products. So we've got a SACM off-bridge one coming up, and then also a good webinar on the impact of the GDPR and the International Criminal Court. So that sounds very interesting as well. So next slide. And just a reminder, the Vivit board election, so if you're a Vivit member, you can vote until May 2nd, and make sure you do. Feel free to go on the website. Each of these has a little profile, so you can read a little more about them. And sometimes these votes do come down to just one or two that separate the folks that are elected and those that aren't. So your vote definitely does count. We encourage you to review and vote as soon as you can, if you have not already. All right, next slide. And there'll be a short survey that will pop up, so we would ask that you fill that out. And as always, for more information, please go to www.vivitworldwide.org. All right, and that concludes our webinar. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance today. And as I said, we'll get the answers out to the questions, and we look forward to you joining with our next SIG Talk series. Thanks, guys.